So I'll just give a quick spiel on the team. I apologize, but I have to run out. I lost my grandmother last week, and I got to get home to see Mom for Mother's Day, so I'll make this short and sweet. Just a recap on what we did this year. This year was my most enjoyable year as a coach. If you would have asked me going into the year if I would have had the same expectations, I would have said no. After last year, what the guys did, it was so valuable. The results, the camaraderie, the team effort was just through the roof. And this year we had quite a young team, and I didn't quite know what to expect or how fast we'd progress. And for those of you who were at the fall meetings, we had such a tremendous prep period. We had up to 75 days on snow. I don't recall losing a single day to bad weather or bad conditions. I think in my report I put 1 to 2 days just to make it sound like we had an off day, but we really were blessed with incredible conditions, and the guys just pushed and pushed and pushed, and it was awesome. Going in December, you know, Mother Nature started to take her toll, and we were hit with some very challenging extreme conditions, and I think we were a bit unprepared for that, so we were off to a bit of a slow start. As you may or may not know, we took the entire group to Europe this year, and for a 3-week racing series. And typically in Europe you show up, we went to Austria specifically, and Austria is what I like to call the mecca of ski racing. And I said, guys, you have to be more prepared than you've ever been, you have to be tougher than you've ever been, and your skis have to be sharper than they've ever been. We showed up January 1st, we were scheduled to go to the Munich Night Slalom. We were going to cheer on Mike Janik, and we get off the plane. Race has been canceled, everything's green, no snow in Munich. So I said, okay, off to the next venue. Bruce set us up with someone right outside of Innsbruck for some training. A very, very nice group of people. Training was awful, so 2 days of that we jetted off to Germany. We were scheduled to do 4 FIS races in Germany. Got up to the hill the first day, we skied the hill, those races were canceled. Back to Innsbruck, tried to find some training, canceled. Off to Kitzbühel to ski, high winds, canceled. It was the first 10 days of our trip were just over and over, 3 hours in the van, here, there, and everywhere. And it was kind of like, guys, I'm sorry, but we're trying here, and just wasn't a whole lot to be had. I don't know if you guys saw our Leogong powder video. We kind of glamorized our European exposure, but that truly was the saving grace of our trip, because the guys were able to go out and have some fun, and we're able to say, okay, this is why we come to Europe. Well, it actually isn't why we come to Europe, but they were able to get their spirits back up and have a good time. The rest of our 3 weeks were much like what I just described. Well, for most of us, Jonathan Hadley and Tyler Wary were in France, actually in perfect conditions on hard snow during this whole time. And Tyler had a great series, winning 2 races and the podium on a couple others. But we were battling it out, and in some very difficult conditions. We ended up in Zagreb one evening, and I thought, oh, this is awesome. You know, I've tried to follow the Kostoviches, and I just actually read a great book, When a Father Loves Gold. It's actually an account written about Ante Kostovic and how he approached ski racing and actually sport in general with his teams. He was a professional handball player, and then he had 2 of the most prominent ski stars. So we cruised into Zagreb, and I thought, you know, I can map this out on my phone and I'll be fine. Little did I know that the access road to Zagreb had changed since the mapping had been displaced. So I'm going up this back road in Zagreb, and turns to dirt with bumps. There's no signs, there's no nothing, and it says I'm almost there. The guys are in the back, and we've been traveling for way too long, and should we continue? We go a little further. I don't know if we're going the right way. A little further. It ends up, we went up on completely the wrong side, had to go back around, added another 3.5 hours to our trip, but it's just how our year panned out for us. We went out east in March, and I told the guys, same spiel, guys, different ball game out here, super hard snow, you gotta be ready. This is gonna be very challenging. The week before, we were in Red Mountain for some of the most amazing skiing I've ever done in my life. but I actually was pulling my hair out because it was the worst prep possible for, or it was what I thought would be the worst prep possible for our Eastern trip. Snow after snow after snow, and the guys, they actually saved me this year because they're like, just another day, we can do this. They had this mentality on the team that nothing was impossible, and it really saved us throughout this 3-month horrible winter experience. And by horrible, I mean just challenging conditions. So we showed up in March, got back east, my old stomping grounds, rolled into Vermont, and I'm seeing record high temps, and I'm going, oh no, this is going to be challenging. And I call up my good buddies at the Green Mountain Valley School where I worked for a number of years. Hey, is there training available? Well, we don't even know if the lifts are going to turn because there's no snow and it's raining and there's rivers coming down the slope. So we end up sending two to Maine, 4 to New Hampshire. Tyler, we actually got Tyler back because we sent him to Quebec and he just sat in his hotel room for most of the time. So that was our payback for having such a good experience in France. But much of the same, we had horrible conditions where the snow was so soft, if you were walking in your ski boots, you'd go all the way up to your knee. They had a tremendous race crew in New Hampshire where they were throwing salt and prepping the slope the best they could. The guys had some great results, and we thought, okay, well, we're making the most of a challenging experience. We ended up going up to Quebec to compete in NORAM finals and Canadian nationals, and I'd been speaking with Bruce on the phone for a while. You know, hey, this isn't looking good. I was speaking to Tyler because he was up there firsthand with the situation. And I said, what do you think about us heading back home to get some training in for the final push? And Bruce was all for it. I said, really? Yeah, do what you got to do. And that's, side note here, but that's what I love most about this job is that we have total support from the office and from you guys to do what needs to get done. That decision, we were in Quebec for 12 hours, and that decision to return home a week early before Spring Series proved to be the most valuable decision, most important decision we made all year. We returned home partially because they wouldn't let us go go-karting because that was already booked for 2 days in Quebec, so we had to leave. And if you guys don't know about the go-karts in Quebec, they're phenomenal, fast and great track. So we came home to Panorama. Hampstead hooked us up with some incredible training. Manny let us stay in his house. We had a gym in the house. The guys were working on their bench press. We were working on our skiing. You know, we were back to winter, and then the results that followed were completely outstanding. So total testament to the guys' ability to work hard, to keep a positive attitude. And I truly believe, I preach it to the guys every day. I don't care the result. It is all about the effort, and their effort was bar none the best I've ever seen of any group. So I hope that continues, and you guys should all be proud of everything you've given to this group to create that type of atmosphere. I'm just going to show you one stat that I'm very proud of. And I was actually I just went to Las Vegas last week with my best friend, and before we went to Las Vegas, he was showing me some stats on his computer. His name is Jean-Pierre Dagnon, and he coached the Quebec team the last 2 years, and he said, look at what my team did, it was so great. And I said, wow, that's incredible. You know, they improved their world rankings as a team by 14%. And that's phenomenal. As a team across every event to improve that much, it's an amazing year. And for those of you who don't know, we were looking at this because he had some turmoil with his boss, and he is not with them anymore. And I just wanted to see how our guys anteed up. So we ran all the provincial teams amongst all the events just to see where we all stood. And for the Quebec team, their change in world ranking they improved by 14%. They improved their
32 on your book.
That too. They improved their fist points by 19%. The Alberta team improved by almost 11% in world ranking, and the Ontario team actually went backwards by 5%. But they did improve their fist points. And for those of you who are somewhat new to the sport, you can actually improve your fist points and not improve your world ranking. So it's very important to judge your growth or how successful you are off your world ranking. So then we ran our numbers, and I thought, oh, this can't be right. And our team as a whole improved by 34%. With just a testament to the guys, their effort, when that many guys have that much success, you know something's going right. And I just want to thank you guys for your support. And these guys had had a ton of fun doing it. So hopefully we can keep it up. I told Bruce last year that 2 to 3 years from now would be really good. So now I'm expecting some really big things in the years to come. So I hope you guys are all excited for what the future has in store. Anyway, that's the spiel on the team. What I'd like to share with you now, some of you, if not all of you, have heard about the new regulations that are going into place next season and the following season. So I just prepared a presentation to try to decipher some of this and give you guys a better understanding what we have to look forward to. So I like to title it The Then and Now. Any of the parents in the room, can you name the athletes on the pictures for me? Anyone know?
Gosselin and Hirscher.
You got one of them right.
Oh no, it's a Swiss thing.
The greatest giant slalom skier after Denmark. Maybe I'm putting myself out there. Anyone? Michael von Groningen. So there could be room for discussion on that one, but those are the two I picked, and you can see the two styles. I mean, although similar in the basics, a little different in the mechanics. So, evolution of giant slalom. In the last decade, there have been 3 major changes imposed by the FIS. First happened in 2003-2004 season, in an attempt to increase safety. This is a theme that we'll continue to see. They increased the minimum side cut radius to 21 meters. And then they actually imposed a minimum ski length of 185 centimeters for the men and 180 for the women. And they also added a maximum stand height. And I don't know if you guys all know what stand height is, but it's the distance from the bottom of your ski to the point where your boot touches your toe piece and your heel piece. Okay, so your brake on your heel piece can actually be higher because when you put your heel down in the binding, that condenses and you actually touch on the outside. So, if that makes sense to you guys. To give you a better explanation, it's when your kids phone home and they say, "Mom, Dad, I need these new lifters." And you say, "Oh, what's that going to cost?" "Oh, it's just $150 from Head for a new kit." That's what they're talking about to get to the stand height. 2007, 2008, in another attempt to increase the safety, the radius moved up to 27 meters for men, 23 for women, and then they actually increased the waist of the ski to 65 millimeters right underfoot, okay? And they reduced that stand height to 50 millimeters. And then the new rules going forward is that next year they're imposing that they'll have increase the ski radius to 35 meters for men and 30 for women, and they're actually going to go backwards with the width of the ski, and it's going to be equal or less than to 65 millimeters underfoot. Okay, and these rules, for most of the athletes in BC, won't have any impact this coming year, but they will the next year. So these rules are imposed at World Cup next year, at Europa Cup, and the World Junior Championships. And then if you want to go on the FIS site, the FIS has all the dimensions. Okay, so you can see for downhill ladies, stays the same. Just moving through the ranks. Actually, downhill men, they're increasing the ski length. Ski length is going up in GS, 188 for women. So your first year FIS, women are going to have to use a 188 GS ski, pretty demanding. GS men up to 195. Okay, and this is all on the FIS website if you want to take a look. This is the profiling with the width under the binding, and then also the stand height changes that go into effect over the next 2 years. So, what does this mean and how does it affect your kids and athletes? Well, I was thinking about it last night. I was trying to think of an analogy to describe exactly what this feels like. I'm sure some of you guys don't know or can't picture what this feels like, but I was thinking it's kind of like driving the Duffy in the team van versus my Audi. So when I go into a corner in my Audi, I'm pretty sure that at the top of the corner the thing's gonna hook up and it's gonna be stable and get me to the spot where I want to be. I'm not quite as confident in the van that I'm going to have that same type of control. That's why I let Jonathan drive when we were in Canada. So I'm just going to give you a little video on
dreams we have, the love we share. This is why we're waiting for. And in my mind, in my head, this is where we all came from. The dreams we have, the love we share. This is why we're waiting for.
So as you can see, skiing has changed quite a bit over the years. I talked to Mike Day 2 days ago now. He's the head coach of the U.S. ski team, and I was trying to get some input as to what he's seeing and how it's going to affect our athletes. And he was saying that, first off, it's quite a bit more challenging. He was saying to run the same course requires probably an estimate of 20% more output, more energy to get these skis to do the same thing that the old skis did. They're quite a bit better in rough conditions, so with the longer length they absorb the bumps a little better. But they're very, very challenging at the top of the turn. So if you're back at all or inside, you have no chance of getting the ski to come around. Extremely, extremely challenging. So if you were a tennis player and you played with your shoes untied, if you were going out to get that shot, I think I'd have to be this way to be a proper tennis player, right? You're not going to have that support to make as strong a shot. Just like in skiing at the top of the turn, if that ski doesn't come back, you have to be so precise in your movements, okay? So one of the other things he said, that the most important factor, I said, Mike, how does this impact, are we going to see bigger athletes progressing more rapidly than smaller athletes? He said, well, we're not seeing that right now. What he was seeing is that the veterans were doing quite a bit better than the young athletes. So Ryan Cochran-Siegel, who is by all accounts one of the greatest juniors on all the planet, is struggling tremendously on the new skis, whereas he was world junior champion this year, had a breakout season in pretty much every single event, but he's really struggling to get a hang of this. For everyone in the room, your guys' kids have never skied on skis that didn't come around when they put their foot on edge. So there are new movements, new patterns that have to be developed, that have to be learned to make this all work. So this is just some of what the pros are saying. Ted Ligety, as for how the skis felt, they lock onto the edge hard, slightly smoother in small bumps, take more muscling and twisting, recoveries are slower, and there's less energy out of the turn, and they're far more tiring. So I don't know if you saw the last clip, but the very last clip was Yoon Olsen. You'd really have to slow it down and watch it a couple times. It doesn't look that different, but it's definitely a little more boring to watch. As a coach, I'm going to have to find other things to do to keep myself occupied on the hill. GS is going to become boring. But everything, the movement, the timing of the pressure, everything's getting dumbed down. And again, this is pretty early stages of the development of the skis, so I'm sure they'll get better, and I'm sure we'll close the gap. But as for now, this is what they're seeing. This is actually a quote from Yoon. Super slow and boring to ski on. So a small mistake would result in the ski totally disappearing and moving straight out. They felt scary, impossible to ski on the flats. It felt more like a cross-country skier. He's Scandinavian, so he can say that. But then at the end he said the change to ski on them was not as big as what I expected. So I think what we'll see is that the skis are going to improve. The kids are going to get used to them. But it's going to take some time until we're at the level that we are now. So how are we going to handle these changes? I know at BC Alpine we're approaching it in two areas. The first is the technical area. What are we going to focus on technically that allows us to be successful in moving to these skis with new dimensions? I think it's very important that we focus on body position. As what I've heard and what you've seen, any rotation, any sort of imbalance is going to have a huge, huge impact on the turn, even more so than it has in the past. Some of the ideas that I've discussed with Jonathan and the guys is possibly having a wider stance. From my days on the older skis, I remember that my feet were always glued together and it was so hard to get them apart, and thus my stability wasn't what it should be. So we're going to really focus on having a consistent stance, maybe not wider is the right word, but very much consistent. And then we'll probably have to incorporate some up and down just to get the skis to bend, because I know that some of our guys, as great a season as Ford Sweat had, he skied from here, okay? That's not going to work on these skis that don't come around at the top of the turn. So we're going to have to evolve our movement patterns a little more. The body is a lever. If you guys remember that first picture of Von Groningen versus Hirscher, Von Groningen was more of a huge lever. Hirscher was very compact, very dynamic. Okay, so all these things are going to have an impact on how we approach training with these skis. The next thing is the tactical adjustment. Mike Day, when discussing with Mike Day, he said, you know, Ted can still pull the same radius, but he has to have a lot of speed. He can't do it at the same speeds. And he said the pressuring of the ski typically comes later. So we'll just take the gate for instance. If you guys can all picture a gate, and your athletes are typically getting their pressure by the gate, that pressure now is going to become lower in the arc. So obviously that's something that will work to change, but that's what they're seeing right now. We'll focus, what I'll show you in the drills section that I have coming up, we're going to go back to a little rounder line. Over the last couple years, we've really focused on running very direct at the gate. Direct in the sense that we wouldn't climb up the hill, but very direct and get outside the gate, and we'd have a very short radius. Now we're going to have quite a bit rounder line because this pressure is going to take longer to achieve. At least that's what we're anticipating. And what we've already started to do, what we did in April, is we did a lot of training on Super G skis. Super G and GS courses, Super G and slalom courses, just to get these guys used to being challenged on turning skis that aren't quite as easy to turn. So this is what we did in April. Most of the drills involve getting the body position centered over the skis, okay? And a little bit of steering to get the skis into the fall line so that when you step on them, they'll actually come around. For those with a trained eye, just watch the progression in the first couple clips. Ford is on Super G skis in a GS course, and you can see run 2, run 3, run 4, he actually gets quite a bit more comfortable on these skis and able to run a cleaner ski through the turn.
Why does my soul feel so bad? Why does my heart feel so bad? Why does my soul feel so bad? Why does my heart feel so bad? Why does my soul feel so bad? Why does my heart feel so bad? Why does my soul feel so
So you can see those are just some of the drills we've been working on. That first drill is kind of ironic that we've gone back to this, but years ago we actually worked on sliding to the top of the turn and engaging the edge in the fall line, and then we've moved with the equipment. We're able to run a very direct, clean arc. These guys, they just, for years now, the last 2 years specifically with this group, we start all of our camps with parallel slider turns. So if you can imagine just matching up your lower body, strong pole plant, very, very basic position, and I'm sure everyone in this room could probably do it better than most of your athletes, most of your kids, because that's how we grew up skiing, that's what we know how to do. These guys, they don't know how to slide their skis at all. Why is this important? On skis that don't turn, you're going to have some fudge room, some play at the top of the arc so you can get into a balanced position that allows you to engage the ski and be successful in these on this new equipment. So I was just watching this, I was thinking back to myself. I had mentioned earlier that I read a book this winter, When a Father Loves Gold, and it's about how Auntie Kostowicz raised his children. And he liked to put them in environments that were so dangerous or so challenging that they had to succeed. So one of them was diving. He did a lot of diving, never head first because he was aware of the concussion factor, but he always wanted to challenge them to new heights so that when they got to races, got to competitions, nothing seemed dangerous or challenging. They did a lot of rock running through rocks, so if they made a mistake or took a misstep, they'd fall over and hurt themselves. And this is how he approached their trainings. And I always tell the guys, we're going to be so outside of the box that when we get to race day, it won't seem like a challenge, it won't seem difficult. Obviously this is all in a constructive, hopefully safe manner. You know, and Ollie can probably attest to this. My first couple years coaching, I remembered back as a young coach, I didn't have a whole lot of guidance, and I was thinking to myself, what is the best thing I can do for my athletes to enable them to have success? And I started the first couple years, and I always set easy environments because I wanted them to feel confident. And I thought that was the path. If they're always feeling good, then they'll always have the confidence on race day. And now, 10 years later, everything we do is as challenging, as difficult as I can make it, because you really can't put limitations on these athletes. And I'm sure from 5, 6, 7 on up to our guys, there's so much that the human body can do that who are we to impose these limitations? Obviously put them in a safe environment, but just watching when one guy does it, I don't know if you guys saw our video last year when they were riding the railing on our mountain bikes, and Broderick Thompson was the first one to do it, and it took You'd have to ask Jonathan and the guys how long it took them, but it took them a considerable amount of time for the first guy to make it. But once the first guy made it, they were all doing it. It's amazing how quickly we can adapt, get put in these circumstances. So going forward, this is what I see. Opportunity. How are we going to approach this? Well, this is great for BC. This truly is. There's no other province, no other place on the planet in ski racing that I know of that has as rugged, as diverse of terrain, that skis on as many different types of equipment, park skis, fat skis, race skis. I think our athletes are going to be able to negotiate this change very successfully. It levels the playing field. Now everyone is on new equipment. No one has the advantage of having 10 years experience, 5 years experience. And I know that once the playing field's leveled, there's no group that works harder than our group. And at the end of the day, the guy who puts the most in is the guy who gets the most out. So these guys are going to have huge success. Another opportunity, and this is just for North America, is a NORAM exemption for 2012-2013. Next year at the NORAM level, we are still allowed to compete on the old equipment. So I can have athletes racing on 27-meter skis versus European athletes that might come over racing on 35mm skis. Obviously, we'll have to see how course sets play out and conditions, but this could be a huge, huge advantage for us, particularly in North America, for the upcoming year. Some of the challenges ahead of us. Well, the first is equipment. Speaking with some of the suppliers, we might not even see the skis until the fall. And not all of our guys will get the equipment. So that means that the club level won't see these skis for another year. So that poses the biggest challenge. Second is the time on snow. If we don't have the equipment, we don't have the ski time. So guys like Ford Sweat, who I predict to be a World Junior medalist next year, if he has 40 days less on snow this summer on the new equipment and then has to compete on them next year, where do we make up that time? What do we do to bridge that gap? As you saw, some of what we're doing is skiing on Super G skis, trying to create that same type of challenge so that he'll be successful when he gets the new equipment. And then just like the opportunity, it is also a challenge. If Ford goes in next year in December and he wins the first NORAM in Panorama, or if Tyler wins, they were both very good this spring against a world-class field, they might get a call up to go race World Cup or go race Europa Cup. Well, if they do that and we haven't had any time on the new equipment, how are they going to compete? So these are just some of the issues that we're trying to get a handle on as we go forward. And then the last is safety. Obviously, with new equipment, it has to be done in an environment where the guys can progress and feel comfortable and confident. I think in BC, one of our biggest challenges is finding an environment where we have consistent snow, hard snow, consistent surface that allows you to experiment and get comfortable on the new equipment. So that's all I have. If you guys have any questions, I'd love to discuss for a little bit before hitting the road.
I've got a quick question, Brandon. We've got a very young group up in Quesnel. Should they be, our coaches, teach them differently now that we're going to new equipment eventually?
What age are you?
They're anywhere from 5 years up to 13.
You know, I think the best thing you can do is focus on fundamentals, regardless on what skis you're using. If you're on fat skis, park skis, race skis, I don't think going equipment specific is a need, but very strong fundamentals is the best thing you can do. Going fast, I think at that age is semi-irrelevant. Strong pole plant, moving forward at the top of the turn. I mean, it's all stuff that's going to pay dividends on any type of equipment. Because we don't know if these changes,
they're going to stay there 10 years from now.
Exactly.
Who knows what can happen. And
Exactly.
Our coaches really are based on fundamentals, and that's what they are doing. Fundamentals going to stay the same.
In an ideal world, I wouldn't want to have to teach pole plant to someone who makes a BC ski team, or continue to teach pole plant to someone who's a fifth-year member on the BC
That's
ski
your job.
team. So,
Okay.
Just like we talked about yesterday too, Brandon, you mentioned the movement up and down, talked about utilizing a step-up turn as an exercise. Those are the things we can do at the entry level to start the process down the road. So when they come to you, they're higher up than Ford is. You know what I mean? There's
Absolutely.
lots of movement. There's lots of ability to step up, turn, to change the ski. You know, all that kind of stuff. We can start that.
My last 2 years at the Green Mountain Valley School, I did a lot of work with outreach programs. So we'd go to the local high schools, local junior high schools, the clubs. I would present to coaches, present to athletes on proper technique, where we're going, and it's pretty amazing. I bet if I watch the coaches in this room ski, and then I watch kids come down in no particular order, I could tell you who coached these kids. Because 9 times out of 10, your kid is going to ski like the coach. So it's extremely important. And I don't know who it was that told me. It might have been Aldo, actually. Nigel's old boss. But someone told me, you know what? If you can't do it yourself, don't pretend, and don't try to demonstrate for the kids. So if you're a happy-go-lucky parent, you want to go out there with your kids and ski, which is awesome, and I encourage it, make sure they ski ahead of you. I wish I had video of Stu Sweat and Ford Sweat, because they ski identical. So, Ford's a little more refined.
What was the, I haven't really followed the equipment changes just to the age of my own kids, but what was the safety issue they were trying to address? And the comments from the World Cup guys didn't seem to me that it would be addressing safety concerns.
You know, I think we can turn to Ollie on this one. He was part of the mastermind.
Yeah, don't blame me, as I said yesterday. I was fortunate to be involved in that study. Actually, I got called over to Salzburg, Austria, to help out with the first year of the 3-year study. So I was only involved in 2010. And essentially what happened was 2009, if you can think back on the World Cup, an article got published by a group in Norway who actually had been looking at injuries on the World Cup from 2007, 2008, 2006, 7, 8. And they showed that about 43% of all the World Cup racers that started the season were injured throughout the season. And of those, I think it was about 30% were severe, meaning they'd missed more than 28 days of skiing. And then that was the same year that, what were the big names that went down at, like, Birds of Prey and... So,
Yeah, Axel went down that
Axel,
year.
there was a bunch of big names that went down, and basically the athletes said, this can't stand. You know, we're putting ourselves on the line here for a 50% chance that we're going to be injured. So FIS was forced to say, okay, well, we can't just implement anything. So they hired a group out of Austria, and they've done a 3-year study. And the first year was essentially, I went over and we interviewed 60 plus people, from the World Cup athletes to the World Cup coaches to the people that build the skis to the FIS to the safety. Every group was represented. And from those, it was identified, I think there was 5 main things that came out of it. And the top of that list was the interaction between, or just the equipment itself and how it interacts with the snow. And on the World Cup level, it's the skis are extremely aggressive, and the transmission of force from that ski into the body is extremely aggressive. And there's no room for error. So basically, if that ski decides to falter at all, the weakest link is usually the human body. And fitness-wise, you cannot get strong enough to cope with that equipment. It's just the equipment's outpaced the human body in some respects. So they went to the drawing board and they put markers and tracking systems on forerunners at World Cups, and we're looking at it. And I think somewhere along the way, I haven't been involved in the study in the last 2 years, but somewhere along the way, I guess they discovered that making that direct transmission of force from the ski to the body was probably the easiest and most, just the easiest place to make an impact. So I'm not sure where they've gone to such extremes. I don't know. I can't talk to that, but certainly from all the experts that were talked to, and then the subsequent year of study, they found that it was the equipment interacting with the snow. There's just no room for error. If you're a World Cup racer on those, especially in speed events, and you're in a turn, you're on injected snow. The amount of edge that's actually in the snow is in the millimeters. I don't know if any of you have skied on injected snow, but it's literally like the tiniest amount of edge is digging in. You're going 130 kilometers an hour, and if that snow is interrupted at all, your knee's gone. So that's about all I know.
On that note,
Thank you, Brendan. Safe travels.
Thank you.